The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ilara entered, her footsteps echoing against the crystalline floors. Behind her walked Kesh, towering over her adoptive mother despite being barely into adulthood by his species standards. His chitinous plates gleamed under the chamber's artificial light, mandibles clicking softly in a rhythm Ilara recognized as nervous anticipation. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Thexerin announced, his four eyes blinking in deliberate sequence. No species in recorded history has successfully raised another's offspring to maturity. The biological incompatibility alone should have killed them? Ilara interrupted, her voice calm but edged with steel. "That's what you told me 15 cycles ago when I found Kesh's egg pod floating in the debris field near Proxima Station." The council members shifted uncomfortably. They remembered. Everyone remembered the human who had ignored every scientific protocol, every biological imperative, every logical argument presented to her. Kesh moved closer to Ilara, a gesture that would have seemed threatening to anyone unfamiliar with Zarthian body language. But Ilara simply reached up and touched the ridge along his thorax, a gesture of comfort she'd learned when he was just a larva, barely the size of her forearm. The Zarthian young require enzymatic secretions specific to their parents' biology, Counselor Mirith spoke, her crystalline voice tinkling like breaking glass. Their neural development depends on pheromonal imprinting. Their exoskeleton maturation requires— "I know what they require," Ilara said. "I spent 2 years working with xenobiologists to synthesize what Kesh needed. I learned Zarthian chemical communication. I modified my own skin biome to produce compatible bacteria for his molting cycles." "Impossible," breathed Thexerin. "Improbable," Ilara corrected. "Humans have a word for what we do when logic says something can't be done. We call it stubbornness, or sometimes love." The chamber's doors opened again and 3 more figures entered. A Vrel juvenile, her bioluminescent patches glowing soft purple, the color of contentment. A young Nomathi, his scales still showing the iridescent patterns of adolescence, and cradled in a specialized environmental suit, a Kolan infant, whose methane-based biology should have made coexistence with Ilara lethal to one or both of them. "This is my family," Ilara announced, Kesh, Leary, Torum, and Little Quelix. "Each one found me when the galaxy had abandoned them. War orphans, survivors of station failures, a medical anomaly deemed incompatible with life by his own people." Kesh's mandibles clicked rapidly, and Ilara didn't need a translator to know he was angry. She placed a hand on his forearm, another gesture they'd developed together, one that meant "I've got this." "The human claims to have raised these individuals," Thexerin continued, reviewing data on his holographic display, "but our experts suggest they've simply survived in proximity to her. True parental bonding requires—" Kesh's voice cut through the chamber, speaking in perfectly modulated galactic standard. "When I was in my 3rd instar, I contracted Zarthian molt fever. My body temperature spiked to levels that should have caused irreversible neural damage. Ilara stayed with me for 47 hours straight, manually cooling my carapace with water and her own body. She sang to me, human songs that made no biological sense to my auditory organs, but somehow I knew I was safe. I knew I was loved." Leary stepped forward, her bioluminescent patches shifting to bright yellow, the Vrel color of truth-speaking. "My species bonds through dream-sharing in our larval pools. Ilara cannot dream-share, but every night of my childhood she sat beside my rest chamber and told me stories, human stories, and somehow those stories became my dreams. She taught me that family isn't about sharing biology, it's about sharing hope." Torum's scales rippled, creating the Nomathi expression of profound respect. "My people said I was too damaged, too traumatized by what I'd seen in the war. They said I'd never integrate back into a clutch. Ilara didn't try to make me Nomathi again. She let me be broken, and in being allowed to be broken, I learned how to heal." The Kellan infant's translator box activated, its mechanical voice somehow still conveying warmth. "Mommy breathes wrong air. I breathe wrong air for her. But Mommy makes right love. Right love same in all air." Ilara felt tears threatening, a human biological response that she'd had to explain to her children countless times. Kesh moved closer, and now Leary, Torum, and Little Quelix's mobility pod surrounded her. A family that, by all logical standards, shouldn't exist. Ambassador Thexerin's eyes blinked in a pattern Ilara had learned meant deep contemplation. The human concept of adoption exists in our databases, but we understood it as an aberration, a logical solution to population maintenance, nothing more. You understood it wrong, Alara said simply. Humans don't adopt because it's logical? We adopt because every child deserves someone to care when they're sick, to celebrate when they succeed, to hold them when they're afraid. We adopt because family isn't about DNA, it's about choice. And love is the most illogical, improbable, impossible thing in the universe, which is exactly why it works. Counselor Mirith's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with something that might have been emotion. You have proven that biological barriers can be overcome through determination and adaptability. This is noteworthy. We're not a research paper, Kesh said, his voice firm. We're a family. The council members exchanged glances, a rapid series of non-verbal communications in a dozen different biological languages. Finally, Thexrin spoke. The Galactic Council recognizes Alara Martinez and her family unit. We acknowledge that humanity has demonstrated a capacity we did not know was possible. You have our, he paused, searching for the right word in galactic standard, our respect. Alara smiled, and Kesh's mandibles clicked in the pattern she knew was his version of a laugh. Respect wasn't what they'd come for, but it was a start. As they left the chamber, Quellix's translator box chirped softly. Mommy, why they surprised? Love not hard. Alara looked down at the environmental suit that housed her youngest child, then back at her impossible brood. No, sweetheart, she said. Love isn't hard. Love is the easiest thing in the universe. It's everything else that's complicated. And as they walked out into the station's common area, where 100 different species stared at the human and her adopted children, Alara realized something profound. The galaxy had said it was impossible. Biology had said it was illogical. Science had said it couldn't work, but humans had never been very good at accepting what couldn't be done. Behind them, in the council chamber, Counselor Mirith accessed her personal database and began a new file. Subject: Human Parental Adaptability. Conclusion: Further observation required. But in the notes section, in the private space where only she would ever look, she added one more line. Perhaps we have much to learn from these illogical beings. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Alara had known all along. Love didn't care about biology. Love didn't care about logic. Love simply was, and sometimes that was enough.